everyone, and welcome back to another episode. Excuse me. One, two. Welcome back to another episode of Resilience by Faith podcast. I am Reese, your host, and today we have a very special guest. Her name is Athena Estelle. Welcome to the show. Super excited to have you and super excited to get into conversation today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, we're excited to have you and my audience. They love when I bring people from all over the world on the show. Do you mind sharing with us where are you recording from or podcasting from today?
Yeah, I'm in North Florida, so right across the Florida-Georgia line.
Okay, okay. Like Jacksonville-ish.
Yes. Yep.
Gotcha. Okay, I have family up that way. Cool beans.
Oh, very cool.
Yes, I love Florida. So thank you for taking time out your day to spend with us to have a very important conversation.
Of
The
course.
topic for today, guys, if you haven't already read it, is about postpartum. And I know a lot of moms listen to the show. I've had mom coaches on the show before, but I think it's something to have someone who actually like experience postpartum. Definitely, I think it's something you hear about and it's talked about like maybe with inner circles but never out loud, at least not to
Mhm.
to the degree we need it to be. And so I'm excited to have this conversation today, and I feel like it's going to help a lot of people. And even if it doesn't help you directly, you can share it with somebody. I'm sure you know someone, guys. So be a resource. But with that, I want to ask you, Athena, when did you, I guess we'll start from the very beginning. Take us back to when you found out you were pregnant and the joy and like going through the stages of pregnancy and kind of how was that ride for you?
Sure. So we had been married a little over 5 years. In
Uh-huh.
2019, we had kind of decided, we would stop preventing, start trying to grow our family. And we were very, very fortunate because it happened very quickly for us. So
Yeah.
I am eternally grateful for that. I have a lot of very close friends and some family members that have had their fair share of infertility issues. So
Mhm.
from the get go, I was very excited,
Yeah.
kind of shocked. It was definitely a
Mhm.
shock to both of us, but very, very excited. We were ready to start our family. So we announced our pregnancy October 31st, actually, on Halloween. I decorated the door of the nursery and made it like a
Uh-huh.
big construction zone. And
Oh.
I made like a big, like the school board that you made your projects on when you were in middle
Yeah.
school. And it
Yeah.
said under construction, baby
Uh-huh.
Brown coming May 2020.
Oh.
So we
Oh.
would like wish people like happy Halloween. Do you want to see what we're doing in the guest room? And so yeah, it was really exciting to Zoom and FaceTime our friends and family back home. So that's how it
Yes.
started. And then I had a very healthy pregnancy.
Oh.
Honestly, textbook healthy pregnancy, no issues,
Mhm.
no high blood pressure, no
Yes.
glucose issues with the high sugar.
Right. Mhm.
And then the world changed in January of 2020.
Yeah.
So I was working on a skilled nursing unit in the
Yeah.
therapy department full time.
Uh-huh.
And I never directly treated COVID patients, but the way the
Right.
hospital is laid out or the
Uh-huh.
nursing home is laid out,
Yes.
every room is a different patient with a different diagnosis.
Right.
So
Uh-huh.
despite not treating COVID, the patient, 6 feet away in the next room, they could have had
Mhm.
COVID. And then
Right.
when it really spiked that spring, I want to say it was April, May, I was
Yep.
getting ready to go on maternity leave, but we had like half a COVID unit. So occasionally to have to walk through it or
Mhm.
deliver something down that way. So that's kind of where my anxiety started a little bit. But
Right.
most people who know me, most people, listening to your show that listen to mine, they know I would say I had like a baseline anxiety before, just kind
Right.
of like a very high, proficient, driven personality with
Right.
crossing the boxes, crossing the T's, dotting the I's,
Yes.
but never medicated, just able to deal with it in life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then COVID hit, a little bit of anxiety with that. And
Right.
then I went to my 40-week appointment. The OB said, "Oh, girl, your cervix is hard as a rock." And I was like, "Oh, is that good?" She goes,
Mhm.
no. She's like, no, that's actually not good at all. So, stay active this week, keep working. So I
Yes.
worked another week. I went back at my 41 week and same thing. She's like, we're going to have to induce you tonight.
Yes.
We're not progressing at all. And,
Right.
I tried not to get attached to a birth plan because a birth plan is very my personality. It's
Yes.
very distinct for Athena, but
Yes.
I have had a lot of friends have babies before me. I would say I'm on the
Uh-huh.
later aspect of having kids compared to all of our friends. Most of our friends' children are 5 and above, and my daughter is 3. So
Uh-huh.
we're a little bit, quote, later to the game. But anyways, seeing from their experiences, I was like, these babies are going to do whatever they want. So
Yeah.
me saying, I refuse to get an epidural, I just knew it's probably not
Yes.
realistic for me. So my
Good.
goal was to do it as unmedicated as possible and
Right.
just kind of let things flow. So
Right.
long story short, I get induced that night.
Uh-huh.
Um, Nothing happens. I wake up at 5 a.m. the next morning, 0 centimeters. So they let me get up. We walk the halls, in masks because this is COVID.
Yes.
So we both have masks on. Everybody else is masked.
Right.
So walking, lunging, squatting, doing all the things, pretty much playing soccer as a
Right.
41-week pregnant lady.
No.
The nurses were cracking up because I was like, no, I'm not doing the Pitocin because I had heard,
Uh-huh.
death stories about this. So,
Oh.
um, I'm not progressing. 4 hours later, they said, we really think we should break your water. I'm like, okay. So they break my water.
Right.
Nothing happens. 3 hours later, we need to start Pitocin. I'm like, okay.
Yep.
So I'm still walking, still mobile. After about 3.5 hours of it,
Uh-huh.
the women that can have a natural baby on Pitocin are like living superheroes because for me, those contractions. So, just like a very basic understanding for the listeners, if they don't know,
Right.
Pitocin is a drug that they use to voluntarily contract your uterine muscles without your body contracting, which means the
Right.
medication is forcing your body to contract without a natural contraction. So it's extremely painful for most people with
Yes.
that being said.
Uh-huh.
So for me, I followed suit. Like it was
Right.
awful. And I don't want to scare anyone that hasn't had a baby yet because I do
Right.
have several friends. They
Uh-huh.
had Pitocin cranked up the whole way and then popped out
Uh-huh.
a baby without an epidural. So it's possible, but
Yeah.
for me, it wasn't. So I suffered through. I finally had like a solid breakdown with my husband. I kicked all the nurses out of the room. I
No.
said to my husband, his name's Chris. I said, Chris, I think it's time. Like
Uh-huh.
I don't want to remember my labor like this. Like this
Yes.
is not peaceful. This is not,
Right.
you know, to us, creating
Mm-hmm.
that baby was like the biggest sign of our love for each other. And we know
Yes.
that it was God's plan for us and having a family. So to me, I would tell him, I want to look back and enjoy this. So
Yeah.
got the epidural, 4 moms ahead of me. We all
Uh,
had our babies within 2 minutes of each other. So I think the first mom had her baby at like 6:56, and then there was a
uh-huh.
6:58, and then we were 7, and then there was a 7:02. There was 4 of us like whoop.
Wow. That
So
doctor
yes,
was
our unit
busy.
was very busy.
Yes.
So, our room was super fun though, because we did not
Yes.
find out the gender. So the nurses that we had the night before would like pop in and be like, "Did you have the baby yet?" I'm like, "No, I didn't have the baby yet." And then even the other OBs at the practice would pop their heads in like, "What did you have?" I'm like, "I'm still pregnant." But we had a girl, so that was very
Yes.
exciting. We named her Cecilia.
Uh-huh.
Um and yeah, it was awesome. It was a great pregnancy, great, you know, delivery was great. The
Yes.
process of labor was awful, but you
Uh-huh.
know, you can't win them all.
Right, right. Oh my goodness. So you just took me back to rotations, Lord. I went to my OBGYN rotation and we would come in, put on the turquoise scrubs, put on our booties, scrub in, walk in, get gown, glove. And then the my very first birth that I saw was a vaginal birth. My second one was a C-section. That's why we had to put on the booties. And when everything came flooding out, I was like, okay, now I understand why we needed these. And she was like, yeah, hold this. So I had to retract the bladder. And she was cutting, getting the baby out. And then this baby was not, I understand why the lady had a C-section. This was a toddler. This was not a baby. This was a 10-pound. That was a 10-pound baby. So when she cut, and after we got him, he took his first breath, started to crying. She was like, all right, here you go. Pat, pat, pat. And so I'm hitting the back, and she was like, what are you doing? Hit the back. And I was just like, it's a baby. She was like, you're not going to hurt him. And I went patting. She was like, we got to get the fluid out. And I was like, and then when he took his first actual deep breath, then here come the NICU nurses. It was so quick. They came and they swooped the baby up. They were like, give me my baby. And they had to go through the APGAR test and put him under the Billy lights and all that. But it was just so much fun. And then my very first one, they let me cut the cord. And so my oxytocin was like, that's my baby. We just had a time when in my OBGYN rotation, that was actually my number 2 after the specialty I'm in now. I was thinking, OB, how much fun would OB be to like put on all pink and be like, are we ready to have a baby? And it's a bunch of moms probably not happy.
Oh yeah. Yes. Well, it's just crazy because I feel like, I've heard from my friends, what a great experience it is. Like they're very attentive, that they're helpful. They teach you all the things. And then when we were there, I just kept telling Chris, I was like, this is like a new mom's Disneyland. Like this is the spot. Like I'm not trying to leave. So when they tried to discharge us 2 days later, he's got the bags ready. He's got the little trolley thing all packed up, like the little bellhop thing from the hotel. He's got that packed. And I was like, oh no, like I'm staying. Like the baby and we are not leaving.
We'll see you later.
Yeah.
Is it like how they do? I don't know if you've seen the TikToks, but as soon as you pop out the baby, here come the nurse. All right, now this is how you get them to latch. This is how you.
Oh my God.
Baby to do this and that, and it's like, can I breathe? Can I have a second?
Yeah.
Is it really like that?
So we did skin to skin. So she came right out and went straight on my chest, and then they kind of like toweled her off, and she was probably skin to skin with me, probably 30 or 40 minutes. Yes. And then the lactation consultants come in and they're like, let's try. But she was so tired. She didn't eat for she was born at 7. I think I fed her the first time around like midnight because she just was, she couldn't even keep her eyes open. She was just like bobbing up and down, getting nothing, just asleep. Yeah. It's wild.
Yes, yes. Oh man. Well, I'm happy for a healthy pregnancy. I'm happy for a healthy baby. Definitely your experience was one, especially through the pandemic, but I'm happy you guys made it out not sickly. Baby don't have any repercussions. I'm happy about that.
Yes, that's huge. Absolutely. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. So kind of like lead us into when you started to kind of see things shift. When did things take a left turn, or how long were things good for? Was baby a couple months, or did we make it to a year? Or kind of like, what was your experience?
Sure. So I apologize. It is a lengthy discussion that I'll keep as short as I can. But so from the beginning, she was projected to be 7 pounds, 6 ounces. And when she came out a week overcooked, she was 5 pounds, 13 ounces. So we barely made it out of the NICU. If she was a couple ounces less, and a few other factors, they were thinking about, sending her to the downtown where the NICU is. So we made it out of the NICU fine. It wasn't a concern, but to me, she lost, I think, 6 ounces in the hospital. And then we brought her home, and at her week-old appointment, she was still losing. So bring on all the lactation consultants. They all were virtual. At one point, I had 3. And she would latch fine, but she ate forever. So in the beginning, I mean, I'm talking 30, 40 minutes on one side before I had a system. So I was like, she has to be full. Then the witching hour started at night, which people talk about, which for us, she was not colic. She did not have a tongue or lip tie. Her anatomy was fine. It was more so she was not getting anything to eat. So week 2 of life, I get a baby scale.
Yeah.
I put her on a routine of feeding on one side for 20 minutes, the other side for 20 minutes, and then pumping the rest of what's in me for 20 minutes.
Okay.
So it just became very monotonous and very intense because I was
Okay.
weighing her at the end of every feed
Yep.
and then keeping track of the poop diapers, the pee diapers, and the weight multiple times a day. So that had kind of started to get me a little, I guess you could say anxious. It was
Yeah.
not, it was just very unsettling. That's probably the
Yeah.
best way for me to describe it. So we would go to the doctor weekly for weight check-ins.
Right.
And we did that until she was 4 months old. At 4 months, she finally hit, I want to say, the 7th or 8th percentile, which the doctor was happy about. I
Yeah.
still wasn't, but he was happy. And obviously, he's the professional. Then at her 5-month checkup, we go in. She is where he wants her to be,
Uh-huh.
but he mentions, I think she might have torticollis. And I was like, what?
Uh,
Like, I knew what that was, but I guess I wasn't very familiar. So for the listeners, it is when the muscle on the side of your neck, it's called the sternocleidomastoid. In the medical world, we call it the SCM. It is
yeah.
when the baby favors one side or another. So they'll either look over that shoulder or they'll look over the other shoulder, and they'll either sleep like that, play like that, feed like that, and their neck gets extremely stiff. So then they cannot rotate their head the other direction. So he noticed that, which honestly, I did notice as well. She
Mm.
always favored the left when she'd sleep, and then I would just reposition her to the right or do tummy time. And I just
Yeah.
thought it would help and fix, but no, girl, it did not. So we started going to physical therapy.
Uh-huh.
He told us very honestly, if the therapy doesn't work, we might have to look into a helmet. And I was like,
Yeah.
what? Why? And he said, when the torticollis is severe, it pulls on the muscles in the back of the head as well, and it causes a flat spot on the part that is laying against the mattress. And I was like, how do I not know this as a physical therapist? So, in mine and my husband's defense, he is a sports physical therapist, manually based, and I
Uh-huh.
am a inpatient rehab acute physical therapist. So, neither of us have experience with children physical therapy. So, that was a hit to my pride for sure. I felt so much shame. Like, how do I not know with my own child what is
Uh-huh.
happening? I just felt just so defeated. I was like, just one more thing that I failed at. Like, let's just add it to the resume. So we go to physical therapy. Our girl was amazing, taught
Yeah.
us everything. We did a couple visits. We kept
Uh-huh.
doing everything from home, followed up with the pediatrician at her 6th month. He was very happy about the torticollis, but the flat spot was still predominant.
Yeah.
So it wasn't severe. It was in the moderate range, but his point was the way that it had started rotating the way it had started rotating her head, her
Uh-huh.
ears were becoming misaligned, which if you were looking at her from the front, you would never know. But if
Uh-huh.
you looked down her head, like from head to toe
Yes.
above her,
Uh-huh.
the way that her head was rotating, it was causing her ears to shift. So he wasn't that pleased about that. And the way that the skull was growing in the front right was much less than the front left. So he explained all the helmet things. And of course, being the type A perfectionist, I guess,
Yep.
I started going to different prosthetists to
Uh-huh.
talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I got 3 different opinions.
Yep.
And the long story short with that is, like everything else in America with insurance, there are guidelines for things to be covered. So with the helmet at the time in 2020, the degree of differentiation for the helmet to be covered was 11 degrees. And that is based on this huge mathematical picture that they put on the computer of all the different
Yeah.
axes,
Uh-huh.
I don't know,
Yes.
of the skull. So when you're
Mm-hmm.
looking down on the head, again, from head to toes, it shows all these different angles of the
Yeah.
brain and the skull and how it's growing. So you can tell on the right side, she's 4 degrees here. On the left, though, she's 10 or, whatever it might be. So I go to the first opinion. They're like, it's 8 degrees. And the interesting thing is these numbers cannot be manipulated at all
Right.
because the baby is on like a baby conveyor belt that takes them into like a modified MRI machine for about
Yes.
5 seconds. It's a very quick test. You lay your baby down, You put a little Velcro strap over their head. It like puts them in the machine, pauses. This thing rotates around their head, takes images. They come out, you get them up. They don't even know. So the first one's like, honey, it's 8 degrees. I'm so sorry. I'm like, okay, go to the second one. And again, 8 degrees. So I go to the third one and the guy's like, I think it's great that you're getting different opinions, but you just need to pick. And I said, well, I wanted to meet everyone because for those people out there that aren't familiar with the helmet process, for us, we had weekly appointments with our helmet expert. So I wanted to make sure that I liked them. It's like any other doctor. I didn't want to just pick the first one and then not have a good rapport or trust them or, just those type of crazy first mom type things.
It's important.
So I'm at the third appointment. I said to the man, he was this lovely elderly man, probably in his 60s, like just lovely. And he said, are you okay? And I said, no, I'm not. Like, I'm barely holding it together. And he said, these are just opinions. Like, this is the data that we give you. And then, you and your husband decide. And I said, okay. I said, I just really need it to be 11. And he's like, well, what's with the 11? I said, well, then insurance covers it. And that just takes one more added piece of stress off my plate. Well, he brings her out of the little conveyor belt. He puts the numbers on the screen and he doesn't even have to tell me. I look up the number that I've now been trained to look at is 8. So the money didn't really stress me out because I don't know, number one, God provides, but number two, if she needs it, she needs it. Like, am I going to tell my child if she has buck teeth, like, no, you can't get braces?
Right.
So for us, it was, she needs it. The doctor's recommending it. The orthotist is recommending it, we'll get it. But I think that for me was, as they say, like the straw that broke the camel. That whole helmet experience just destroyed me. And I don't think it was the aesthetics at all, just because as a therapist, I work with patients with amputees. Almost all my patients are in wheelchairs. I work with trauma patients from car accidents. I work with braces and different adaptations on a daily basis. So it wasn't the look of her being in a helmet. I think it was just the overwhelming sense of, I'm a first-time mom. COVID is here. So now I have no support from any of my family and friends back home. I have a husband who works full-time, which is great. I'm very thankful for that. But again, I'm at home trying to figure out all these things. I went back to work after 12 weeks just because I had to, almost, that's a whole other story. But, it was just a lot of shame. It was the whole shame game, which when I first started therapy, we worked on that for probably about a year straight of that. So I noticed after we agreed to get the helmet one day, which just happened to like stick out in my head like a sore thumb. It was January 5th. That night I went to sleep. We decided 2 days prior to get the helmet, and I did not sleep at all that night. It was tossing and turning, staring at the ceiling, praying, reading, getting up, walking around. And that happened for 3 nights. And then I called the OB and I said, I think something's really wrong. I don't feel like myself at all anymore. I don't want to do anything. And it's really hard for me to even get out of bed. And she was floored, because I would have been, if looking back at this, it's so weird. It's almost like an out of body experience, because if you would have told me like, oh girl, you're going to get postpartum depression real bad, I would have like laughed. Like, I remember at my OB appointments when I was pregnant, my OB was very proactive. We talked about postpartum depression multiple times. And I was like, I got this. Like, there is no way. And, I definitely was humbled. And I know that it's just part of my story. And now I just thank God that I'm on the other side of it to tell the story of survival,
Right. Yeah, definitely. Like, I think we can all agree that in our minds, kind of like, we hear certain things and we're just like, never me. That'll never be me. I don't need any extra help. Got a good support system, but we couldn't see what was ahead of us, because God can see it all. God knows it all.
Mm-hmm.
In every
Yeah.
situation we come up against, he already has the solution already planned out, because he's not bound by time. So he
Mm-hmm.
already got it. But certain things are put in our place, because I just got out of a Job season, I call it, of
Mm.
experiencing things to build my character and to get what I need. And I'm bringing this full circle. I just got through reading, like, I'm doing Bible recap is the name of the Bible plan in the Bible
Yeah,
app.
I've done it.
Yes.
Yes, it's
Awesome.
great.
It is
Yes.
great. It's like you read something don't quite make sense. You read something somewhere else that don't might quite make sense, and then they start connecting the dots and your mind's like
Yeah.
like, wow, God, that was amazing. I can just
Yeah.
imagine him up there chuckling at me, because he's just like, oh, girl, get it together. But
Well, and it's like exactly what you said. It's like, there was one point after I got out of the hospital when
uh,
I went into a psych unit for 12 days, but when I got
mhm,
out, I remember telling Chris I was a little bit better, but still nowhere near my normal, like, current personality or the woman that
right,
I was pre-baby. But I
uh-huh,
remember telling him, if this is what God has for me and this is my plan, then I have to be good with it. Like, what am I going to
yeah,
say? You know?
yes,
Because he already knows the ending. Like,
right,
it's already written. So for
yes,
me to come along and think like, oh, this is not what he wanted for me. Like, why did he put me through that?
uh-huh,
No, that's the wrong mentality, first of all. Second
yes,
of all, the end is already written, sis. Like, we
it
have
is.
eternity. Okay?
Yep. Yep, we have
Yeah.
eternity. And I think, like, who would have thought that when you were going through that, you weren't thinking about anything else but your current situation, but look at where you are today. And I know that this podcast is going to help so many people. And if I ever get to the point of finding somebody with some sense and having my own kid, then if I experience this, if I need a pick me up, I can come back and listen to this episode, because I'm
Oh,
just like,
girl.
Lord have
You for
mercy.
sure can. Yes, ma'am. You can.
Yes, you're helping me. Like, would you say, I know, like, a lot of people, they have been coming out, like I said, speaking in waves about certain things, but more so in like inner circles. I don't think anybody have like blatant conversations anymore, because they're like, what will other people think of me? What would they say about me and my character? I don't want to be judged in that way. I don't really know these people. I'm not going to tell them my business. But would you agree that, like, after you have a kid, of course it does change you, but I was thinking more for like the better. And when you're growing, it doesn't always feel good. But I've been watching like YouTubes and hearing from different people in my inner circle, like after they have a kid, they don't feel like themselves. And it's like a shedding, almost like caterpillar to butterfly type of thing. You are becoming a new person. But they say the same
Mhm.
thing when you get married, you're becoming a new person. Like, how did you feel? I don't know. Like, after you had the kid, because you were already married for like 5 years, so you had already got the wife rolled down, but now you're mama. So, kind of, how did you get acclimated to that role of being mom?
Yeah. So that is a very interesting transition. I had a therapist once who explained it as when you birth a child, you
Uh,
birth new life to another human being, but you're
uh,
also birthing a whole new life to yourself because
mm-hmm.
now your life isn't about you anymore. So it is
Right.
a whole new, like, as you birth a child, you're taking care of someone else. You're
Yeah.
also birthing like a new version of yourself. And when she said that, I was like, oh my gosh, why didn't someone tell me that 3 years ago?
That's so
So
good.
for me, I think you definitely are going to have some issues with finding your identity. I think
Right.
for a lot of us, the OB would tell me at my 1 month appointment
Mm-hmm.
after delivery, my 2 week appointment after delivery, you need to invest in self care. Like, a
Yes.
lot of people will say when the baby sleeps, you need to sleep. And for
Yep.
people like me, I did maybe the first week. And then after
Uh-huh.
that, it was, I have too much to do.
Right.
I have to be ready to feed her whenever she wakes up. I have to be ready to
Uh-huh.
clean the bottles and pump and bag the milk and date it and freeze it
Yeah.
and this and that. And, and then you add going back to work, which is a
Yeah.
whole other thing because then you're pumping at work. For
Yes.
myself, this is a
Uh-huh.
little incriminating. I hope there's no police officers listening, but I always told myself if I get pulled over, like they can deal with it. But I
Yes.
pumped on the drive to work. I pumped on the
Uh-huh.
drive home from work. I pumped on the
Right.
drive to church. I mean,
Right.
I was like a cow all the time.
Mhm.
And that's fine because it worked for me and that's what I wanted. But I think
Right.
it's really important to maintain your identity in yourself.
Right.
And whether that is painting your nails or
Mhm.
soaking your feet or
Yes.
putting on a face mask, or
Yes.
if it's none of those things and you just want to sit alone in a quiet room for 20 minutes with
20 minutes.
nothing or read a
Yes.
book or a magazine or go for a walk,
Yeah.
I think for me, I did ask for help a decent
Right.
amount from my husband, and my mom and my mother-in-law were here for a little while. But I
Uh-huh.
also think COVID, I mean, it really affected that for me because
Yeah.
neither sides of our immediate family are in Florida. So I would
Okay.
have to wait for someone to be able to travel here
Uh-huh.
and then deal with the anxiety of thinking about them on an airplane despite wearing a mask. COVID was
Right.
still rampant. I mean,
It
people
still
in New
was.
York were dying on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So it was trying, but I think maintaining your identity is huge. And I also
Mhm.
think I've said this a couple of times on my show as well. For those people that are single, or
Yeah.
maybe your partner is not as involved and
Yeah.
you're having to do more than you thought, I would say
Right.
find that one person that you can really let in to everything. Because
Yeah.
even my mom friends that are some of the strongest Christians I know,
Yes.
we all have moments of weakness. I say that in a
No.
sense of when you are just so exhausted and giving, giving,
Yeah.
giving, giving, it's
Mhm.
hard to remember in the moment, like, this is so worth it. I'm so happy. I'm so
Yeah.
blessed. And I
Yes.
did know those things. But
Right.
also, when you're that exhausted, it is
Right.
next level.
It
It is,
is.
is very trying.
It is. And I can only imagine, I've seen like people come into the office and they're like, they got kid with them, like the baby with them, and they're telling me like some days it takes all the energy I have just to cook dinner. Like some
Hmm.
days it take all the energy I have just to get up and brush my teeth, and that's the only thing I get a chance to do for myself in the whole day. The whole
Hmm.
day is about the baby, the husband, and what needs to be done for the house. I would definitely say, like, if did you delegate any? Like, or did you
Hmm.
guys hire anybody to come in and do like normal everyday things just to take things off your plate? Or are you kind of at
Yeah.
that place now?
So we were really fortunate. And this was another thing I would recommend. Our small group at church created a meal
Yeah.
train. So
Uh-huh.
for people who aren't familiar with that, it's a website. It's just called mealtrain.com, like a choo choo train.
Yes.
And it is so great. You just put in the recipient's name and their
Uh,
address or whatever information they want to divulge. Some people don't want any information on the website. It just has their
uh-huh.
cell phone number and you just call them and get their address when you take the meal. But
Right.
you choose what calendar dates you'd like to accept meals. And
Uh-huh.
then anyone with that link can just sign up and then deliver a meal, or you can deliver a gift card. So they created us a meal train. And I want to say we had meals for dinner for at
Yeah.
least 3 weeks straight. Like it
Okay.
was huge. Yeah, huge blessing. So that was
Thank
off my
you.
plate, which was great. I did make some freezer meals.
Yes.
So that was a blessing. And
Mm.
then as far as cleaning, yeah, I kind of just, Chris and I talked about that a little bit. And it was just kind of one of those things that was, on Saturdays when you're not working, I
Yeah.
need you to run the sweeper while I do laundry or, this or that. He's always been super helpful, which I'm very fortunate. But I mean, I'm sure there's men and dads and husbands listening, but sometimes you just got to give them a little bit more direction, you know?
Yes.
So, but yeah, he was great.
Yes, that's wonderful because Lord have mercy. I just be thinking to myself, I'm like, Lord help us all. But one of the cool things that one of the cool things that the OB did in her clinic that I was shadowing is she had at 4 or 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
started having them, or as soon as they got into their second trimester, like halfway through, making plans of who's going to help you, who's going to be there. Is your mom coming to stay with you guys? Making sure you're asleep. Do you have a feeding schedule? Or kind of how y'all are going to juggle that, making a plan before the plan so that
I
everything is
love
kind of
that.
laid out and not so much suffocating, especially for new moms. They had new mom class. So like all the pregnant ladies, expectant ladies would sit in a circle and kind of discuss what they have planned, what they're afraid about, what their fears are, or resources, just going back and forth within the community that they could tap into. And I thought it was great. But of course, like shortly after that, COVID did come. But I thought it was wonderful because a lot of the other OB places that I had went to or seen, especially with my friends, didn't offer anything like that. They'll give you like information to state resources like WIC and different things like that. But other than kind of having a community group, I think everybody just went to Facebook and that was just it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's good. Um,
Yeah.
definitely. How was your support circle? I know you mentioned that a little bit, that you did have some immediate family come in from both sides and help out, but kind of like after you were like, okay, yep, something is wrong, and they were like, yep, okay, it may be depression. What was kind of like the next steps, and how was your support circle kind of integrated into the whole thing?
Sure. So from January 5th until February 12th, that was, like a 37-day task of my husband and myself trying to get hooked up with a good psychiatrist for myself.
Right.
My dad actually drove down from Ohio, which is where I'm
Mhm.
from, and
Okay.
he was with us, I want to say 5 or 6 weeks. So
Okay.
he really helped my husband a lot because my husband was still working at the time and my daughter was in daycare.
Yeah.
So, he was managing, but I would say he would agree not well. Um,
Uh-huh.
his secretary was crucial for us because she was able to kind of move his patients if they needed to be able to come with me to the doctor, to be able to go with me to different consults and therapy and things like that. So she was great for us. My dad
Mhm.
was, immensely helpful. But then I have two friends. They are, oh, just angels from heaven. I could cry just talking about them. So the one, her name is Donna. She
Uh,
actually used to work with me. She was a therapist as well. She's now retired. She would just come sit with me on the days when Chris got really worried about me for a
uh,
little while there because I started having suicidal thoughts
yeah.
and a couple actions.
Mhm.
So he did not want me to be alone. So she would come over and sit with me. She did take me to therapy a few times. And this was all pre me going to the hospital to the
Yeah.
psych unit. So my other best friend, Kelly, was someone else that we confided in because we didn't tell many people at all.
Right.
Um, Probably I can count on two hands how many people we let in.
Right.
And then eventually we did tell our small group and things like that. But at first, the sense of shame and fear that I was
Right.
feeling was just that I didn't want people to look at me differently. I
Mhm.
didn't want them to treat me differently. I didn't want it to affect my marriage, which it was absolutely affecting my marriage. But,
Right.
when you're that far gone, it's really hard to see straight.
Mhm.
And I think you're just hanging on. It's like
Right.
hour by hour at that point. So those women were crucial. And then a lot of the couples in our small group were great. They would either send meals or come check in on me, just drop things off. And then came the breastfeeding weaning.
Yeah.
So in January, right before the OB she prescribed a low dose of Ambien and Zoloft when I
Mhm.
stopped sleeping. And she told me very bluntly, if I put you on these meds, this is the end of your breastfeeding journey.
Right.
At that time, my milk had changed so much from the stress.
Right.
Um, Completely. The texture, the quality, the smell, the viewing of it, like everything about my milk was different. I didn't want to give it to her anyways. So
Right.
it just kind of organically happened.
Mhm.
Um, but that was also another thing. My goal was to make it to a year. So now I'm a failure again because I only made it, 8 months at the time.
Mhm.
So Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot, but,
Yeah.
I think all those people just pouring into me and loving me,
Yes.
and I had a neighbor. She is amazing. She is a nurse. She
Mm.
has 2 kids herself. Amazing. She would go to the store. She'd go to Target, pretty sure. We
Uh-huh.
all love Target, but
Yes.
pretty sure she'd go to Target when they
Uh-huh.
would get the formula trucks because
Mm.
there was a huge formula shortage. She
Yeah.
would just grab so much extra formula for us. I mean, there were,
Right.
I think, 3 separate times when I was in the hospital, she would drop off cases of formula for Cece. So,
What a
yeah,
blessing.
just little things. I mean, to me, those are huge things, but
Yes.
they all added up, all of those little things and all of those people, because I think, they say it takes a village, but I
Yes.
think when you go through something like that, it
It
really
really.
shows you how
Yes.
loved you are.
Right.
Looking back in the moment, I'm thinking like, thank you. I was appreciative, but I couldn't really absorb it.
Right.
But I think looking back, it's like, oh, I do have a lot of people standing in my corner.
Yes, yes. And definitely, like for anybody listening that may be preparing for delivery or maybe have delivered and they are feeling shame, because shame is another thing a lot of people don't talk about. Um, what what advice would you give them kind of to move forward, if any?
I think the shame part for me was the hardest. That's something we talked about in therapy. I mean, endlessly. My poor therapist. But she is, I mean, she's amazing. I think she's going to be
Yes.
on the show. But
Uh-huh.
anyways, what I would tell them is there are times in life when you genuinely cannot control your circumstances. So, something that she used to tell me was, you didn't give yourself postpartum depression. You didn't
Right.
cause postpartum depression. Postpartum happened to you. It's
Yeah.
just like cancer, you know,
Right.
unless you're a smoker, maybe not lung cancer, but the rest of
Yes.
them, you don't
Right.
give yourself breast cancer, prostate
Right.
cancer, those type of things. So
Mhm.
that was at least her example with me, but I
Uh-huh.
think it's spot on. I didn't
Yeah.
choose this. This is not something that I wanted for my life or my husband or my daughter, but
Mhm.
it's something that happens. And I think we have to get to a place where you can almost accept that and know that you can't control what's happening to you, but you can absolutely control your reaction to it.
Yep.
And
Yep.
what she would tell me is, do something that's going to completely take your mind off of how you're feeling in that moment.
Yes.
So for me, it was journaling. I've
Uh-huh.
always journaled my whole life. I'm kind of a I don't want to say
Yeah.
a nerd, but I guess I've always enjoyed, having a great experience or traveling on a great vacation and then running home to my journal and just word vomiting everything. I've always
Uh,
loved that. So
yeah.
for me, it was journaling. I have a lot of other friends that will just put on an audiobook and go for a walk, or I have a couple of friends that like to do those color by numbers.
Yep.
So I think you just have to find your thing and know that, you can't control everything that happens to you, but you can definitely control your reaction and how you're going to address the issue.
Yes, that's so good, because I think sometimes as human, we think our abilities are way more than what they are. And
Mhm.
your perspective will literally shape your experience. If you think about it in a negative way, then maybe you'll get a negative outcome. But if you switch it to something positive, where you can find the joy, where you can find a little spark of hope, of glimmer, then we can probably push through. But our mindset is so important when you're going through trials and tribulations. I totally agree. Um, and I want to say thank you so much for being on the show. Where can people find and connect with you? And please
Sure.
share the information for your podcast too.
Oh, okay, sure. So my first name and middle name is Athena Estelle, and that's Estelle. So my website is athenaestelle.com. And then the name of my show is called Delivered: Finding Victory After Postpartum Depression. And you can find that on pretty much every major podcasting host. So, Amazon, Audible, Apple, Spotify, all
Yeah.
the things. So,
Yes.
yeah,
And
I'm
guys,
very
please.
humbled and I feel very honored that are doing your show. I think it's wonderful. I'm just so
Thank
glad to
you.
be a super small part of it. And I just wish you so much success.
Thank Thank you. I wish the same back to you, sister. I'm definitely thankful for you taking time out your day and sharing your story with all of us, but also what you're doing to kind of give back and push forward on your side of things, your website, your podcast, and everything that you're doing to encourage other people. Definitely, it takes faith, but it also takes nerve and guts because, of course, even in this, you could get in your head and be like, oh, well, maybe I don't want to tell that much, or maybe I don't want this, or maybe I shouldn't share that. But it's the things that you think you shouldn't share or say that makes the biggest difference for somebody listening. So thank you so much for your resilience and your faith that you modeled throughout that whole situation. I know that our number one father, your earthly father, yes, but the king that sits above us all, I know he was very pleased with how you navigated that, and I think that was probably his game plan the whole time.
Aw,
Yeah.
thank you. That's so sweet. No, I
Yes.
mean, I've said it so many times. I think, life is hard, right?
Right.
With faith, with
Yes.
the Lord Jesus on our side,
Yes.
right? So I
Right.
think I know for a fact I would not be here without him. There's no way.
Right.
So,
There's I
yeah,
was just
I'm
saying
just
that.
grateful to be here and share
Yeah.
about it. I think it's, like I told you, it's one of those taboo topics that no one wants to bring up, but it's taking lives every day. So, it
It
needs to
is.
be talked about.
Yes, and I'm so happy you're doing this. And this podcast will go out all over. I urge you guys to share it with anybody that you know that can benefit from it. And definitely, guys, thank you for listening and being an active part of this community. Of course, you can always plug in with us at Resilience by Faith on Facebook and Resilience X Faith. POD on Instagram. Start the conversation, share with us your feedback, reach out to Athena and tell her the good news about what you got from the show and what you got from her story. And as always, guys, I will see you on the next episode. Have a beautiful week and write in if you need anything. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you, Athena, for being here. And definitely we'll be in touch.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good
All right,
one.
sweetheart. Thank you.